Yeah. Yeah. So this is where I was 10 years ago. I was so bullish on this technology. I still am. It's got its obstacles, but it's around the corner and it's something to look forward
Mhm.
to. And so I'm involved in all of the community discussions. And what I started to realize is people were saying, hey, this is a little clunky now, but give it 10, 15 years. And the rate of technological expansion is going to completely blow this out of the water. And then they pointed me back to Moore's Law. And I started addressing technology from that angle, from that interest, from this kind of video game centric view of the world. And I really expanded into, wow, like this is actually incredible. Like I was graduating high school around that time, so I didn't really take into consideration just how dramatic a change technology was having on our world. The year 2000, no one had a smartphone. By the end of the
Right.
decade, an intelligent computer was in every single person's pocket. So if you spend any time learning about the rate of technological expansion, chances are you'll come across someone by the name of Ray Kurzweil, who,
Yes.
yeah, Kurzweil, in case anyone doesn't know, was this inventor in the 1960s, 1970s. He came out with some really important things. I should know off of the top of my
Speech,
head.
text to voice or something like that.
Yeah,
I,
something
I
along
think
that line.
he
Big into speech processing and yeah, visual stuff as well, but like very fundamental parts of the technology.
Kurzweil's talking about this idea of the law of accelerating returns, which is based off of the notion of Moore's law, which is the increasing rate of transistors on chips. It's getting faster. It's doubling every year in 6 months or something like that. We have to think of this as an exponential problem, which is tricky because humankind is actually not equipped to think and deal about the problem of exponentiality. Cough, cough, the coronavirus pandemic. We can see it.
I was just about to
Yes.
say, people don't understand exponents.
Right. Our nation's leading health advisors come in front of the American people and say, you need to buckle in. This is about to go absolutely sideways. And they're trying to explain to people what a virus that has an R naught of 4 or 5 can do in a very short time, because we evolved on a scale to know, like, hey, you're going to go into this forest and you see a leopard over to the right, you're going to go left. Like, that is the rate of thought that people typically have. They don't think of that leopard leaving their view and going out and suddenly developing the weapons of mass destruction, that they come back to the forest and it's like, oh, I didn't think to deal with that. Yeah, well, because why would you?
Right.
Our brains are still
Exactly.
fundamentally the same as they were thousands and thousands of years ago, but we're dealing with this exponential technology. He said back then, like, Kurzweil started making predictions about this. He said, based on the rate of expansion that I see here, we're going to have computers the size of people's hands in their pockets right around the year 2005 or so. He predicted smartphones. And like, there were people back then who were saying, dude's crazy.
Yeah.
And,
how would we ever make computers that small?
Right. I mean, like, he has been right a significant amount of times. And it's always hard to be a Nostradamus type person because you get proven wrong, your credibility goes way down. And a lot of people, they hear Kurzweil's name and they'll kind of shut off and they'll stop paying attention because like, if you expand this 10, 15 years from where we are, it gets really weird and some really weird predictions can happen. He's saying we're going to have smart computers the size of blood cells that are as cheap as pennies.
Yeah.
And eventually, I won't get into the singularity right now. Maybe if we have time later on, I'll talk about that.
No, but I think you're making a great point, though, is that a lot of his predictions, when you're far away from them, they make absolutely no sense because we don't have this frame of reference to understand exponential growth. Even looking back and recognizing that, hey, he was right from the 60s, 70s, and 80s up until the 2010s, basically a lot of the stuff that he was predicting has come to pass already. And then the next 15 years, though, it seems insane to think about some of the stuff he talks about. And so people turn off. But when you actually look at his record, and it's not just his record as like a predictor, the actual work that he's done, he's now, I believe, a project lead at Google. So he's very embedded in the community that is making these things happen. He's not just some fringe guy off on the side being like, "Ooh, I think this is going to happen." It's very based in what he's actually working on and what these companies are actually doing. So it's important to remember that when you look at his work, because I think you're absolutely right. Some people, they look at it and they go, "This is too fantastic," and they turn off. But Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, we can stop today and take a look at what he said and really kind of try and ingrain that within ourselves. For instance, like one thing that's important to realize is when you're in an airplane going 500 miles an hour, it doesn't feel to you like you're going 500 miles an hour.
Right.
We're in an airplane right now that's not just maintaining a fast speed, but it's getting faster and faster and faster. So that's the first thing. And the second thing that he talks about are the I think he says something along the lines of windows of comprehension, which follow a technological curve. And like technology doesn't start with the first transistor, the first computer chip. It actually starts with the wheel. You know, you go back thousands of years to the fire, the first thing that brought human minds together.
First tool. Yeah.
Essentially, technology at its core is anything that brings the human brain power to a new level. Fire allowed more people to congregate. We kind of communicated a little bit more, and we were able to deal with bigger problems that just one person could not. So intelligence rises with technology. It's kind of, you know, they share that relationship. Although looking at the reality we live in today doesn't seem the case, right? But so these windows of comprehension is like essentially you go from the wheel to boats and sailing, you get to eventually the position of gunpowder, and guns are this radically changing things. But then
if I could recommend, just for people listening, Wait But Why, written by Tim Urban. It's a blog. He did a whole long series of posts on this concept of the rate of exponential growth within technology, going back to these times, exactly what you're describing here, how we've had already this exponential growth in our past. It's been so slow that it's hard to see it. But when you actually start to graph it, we are now at this point in the hockey stick of the exponential curve where it almost feels like it's going straight up. Mm-hmm. So anyway, if people want to look into this more deeply, I really recommend Googling Wait But Why, Tim Urban. And I don't remember the name of the blog post specifically, but he talks about exponential growth, and it's really worth a read. But continue.
To the more primitive human who is dealing with the wheel and fire, a full cargo ship, even in like, I guess the 1700s or something, would really amaze them if they were looking out on the horizon. It would be hard for them to understand what it was they were looking at. And that is the kind of comprehension window that is at the core of this is, you know, as a thought experiment, think if you had a time machine and you went back in time, how can you freak people out the most? And like, you know, you get to guns and then you get to the automobile. The automobile is going to completely, you know, baffle anyone who's on horses. They're going to look at that and go, what in the world is that? That's crazy. Hold on. And so, you know, you wheel to there, big time, shorter time. That time is getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. Automobile to the, I don't know, you know, like the atomic bomb happens and then everything goes crazy. So smartphones, and this is all just, we are at that point of the curve where it goes skyrocketing. And the really kind of scary thing is, you can think of it as a scary thing, but if this doesn't slow down, that window of comprehension becomes on the scale of years. 2 years. If you went back 2 years and you showed people in 2018 this thing, they would go, what? That doesn't make sense. Now, we're not quite there yet. Although if you've been paying attention to these weird videos coming out of the Air Force, you know, all these UFO things, that's possibly what's happening there. We're looking at something that looks like magic. We
don't understand it yet. Yeah.
We don't understand it, but it's just the next rank above on the technological scale. So we're not
speaking
quite.
Of which,
if I may interrupt, I really like that explanation better than aliens. It makes a little bit more sense. It's a little bit more plausible.
This is important to be informing people about, like, hey, the future's at our doorstep and we have to prepare for it, because technological change is a kind of a precursor to conflict. And if we aren't ready for it, you know, like the Industrial Revolution came along, completely changed labor dynamics in the world forever. And a lot of that had to do with the events that led to World War I. You know, people think that we always have had the 40-hour work week, but
not without labor unions.
Not without labor unions, and not without bloodshed, and not without a lot of bloodshed.